Welcome back, Principal Matters podcast listeners. This is episode number 498. We're getting so close to 500. Hi, Will.
Gosh, Jen, can you believe it?
I
And
cannot believe
we're
it.
at the end of April, and yeah, in a couple episodes from now, we'll be doing a big celebration. But who's our guest this week?
Yes, this is a gentleman I met on a trip to San Diego with my friend, Dr. Dustin Miller from Ohio State University. We went to look at principal preparation programs, and we were hosted by Dr. Dominique Smith. And he is incredible leader, incredible school, very cutting edge, very innovative, not without problems, which he'll talk about. But I really can't wait for you to meet this gentleman. So we do, though, have to start with our question of the week.
Yeah, and our question of the week is supported by Summer Pop's math workbooks because principals, when students practice math over the summer, their math scores go up. So, what's your summer plan this year? A great way to start is by going to summerpopsworkbooks.com and ordering their free summer workbook samples. And my friend Pete there will make sure you get exactly what you need. You can review those and then follow up because your students deserve to have a plan for their summer enrichment. All right, Jen, here's our Q&A. I'm just going to read it like it's written. Help.
Is that a question?
Our school construction project was supposed to be finished for the start of the new year, and we found out it won't be completed till sometime late in the fall. How do you lead a school through multiple classrooms being displaced in the middle of a semester?
Okay, so Will, my district is growing fast. We have been building, we have been moving, we have been we have old buildings and new buildings, replacing roofs. This is constant with us.
Yeah.
And I'm going to tell principals, every construction manager will tell you the project will be done on time. No construction manager will come to you and say that that's actually going to happen. So this is no. So I feel the despair and the anxiety from this listener. I truly do, because this listener is going to have to go to teachers and say, guess what? You're going to have to pack everything up in the middle of the year and you're going to have to move somewhere. And I'm going to tell you what this is going to look like. Kicking, screaming, mad. Who's this construction company? Why didn't they know? And there's going to be all the gnashing of teeth. And you're going to push through. And in the end, it's going to be okay. That's what I would say. I don't mean to be condescending, but it's true. It's true. It will be a great story you'll tell 5 years from now. You will survive. You just have to get it done, because what I tell staff sometimes is you are just as important in getting this done as the guys with the hammers.
Yeah.
Your cooperation and the more you can do what they need us to do, the better off we are in wrapping this thing up.
Okay, Jen, that's so practical. And I know this is just a 5-minute Q&A, so I'll add a few thoughts. And again, context matters, but I'm just going to talk about I was in a building once as a teacher that was going through construction, moving in the middle of the year, those kinds of things too. So here's some things that were helpful for me when I was on the other side, which was one, permission to ask your students to help.
Mhm.
If you're in the middle of a school year, you're going to have a room, sometimes rooms full of kids that if you just make it clear that, hey, this is what's getting ready to happen, and you assign some responsibilities and goals, it's and I'm just speaking from my experience, it felt kind of like a little party, like, oh, we can help. And so you're taking things down, you're packing things up, you're moving things together, you're hanging things back up. And so don't be afraid to give yourself permission to just lean into the people that are there. If there are other teachers who aren't being asked to move, then don't be afraid to ask them to help. Don't be afraid to just start gathering the stuff, extra boxes, tote boxes, all that stuff that you need in advance. And then I'm just going to say this to that really strategic person out there, because I know some people listening right now, this is how their brains work. Just do a big brain dump on a spreadsheet so that you can think through everything that you know is going to happen and then track it and check it
Mhm.
off.
Mhm.
And if there's other people that you can delegate things to that could help be like the moving manager or point person for this, man, if you could take that off of your complete list of things to do, somebody else in your building probably would be like happy to help.
Exactly. And depending on the scale of it, you might need to advocate with your district for some moving company help.
That's right.
You might need to say, hey, can we do a community day? I know a district that did that. They made a Saturday where they just had the PTO said, "Hey, we could use all the help." And football players came to do their little workout, their weight room workout, except it was just boxes of books. And scouts came, and it was fun. So utilize those resources, and as Will said, it can be like a big old party. And in the end, it will be a great memory rather than a really heavy one.
Good stuff, Jen. All right, thanks for that Q&A. And how can our listeners stay connected with you and your resources?
Yep. Find me at jenschwanke.com, and that's where you can subscribe to Principal Problems newsletter.
And you can find all of today's resources, including the show notes to Jen's interview with Dr. Dominique Smith at williamdparker.com. So thanks for listening, and thanks for doing what matters. Let's take a moment to thank our sponsors, and then we'll be right back. Why is IXL used in 95 of the top 100 U.S. school districts? Because it works. IXL is research proven to benefit all student populations, including English language learners and special education classrooms. IXL is an all-inclusive online learning and teaching solution for K-12 that accelerates achievement, saves teachers time, and more. This one platform helps you accomplish what normally would require dozens of other tools. For example, as students practice skills, IXL automatically differentiates learning to help them master concepts at their own pace. Teachers get real-time insights into how students are performing so they can provide timely support. What I love about IXL are the personalized SAT and ACT study plans. Students just need to enter the most recent test score, and IXL automatically generates a custom list of skills they should work on to improve their scores. Discover what IXL can do for your school. Visit IXL.com/PM today.
You're listening to Principal Matters, the School Leaders Podcast.
Welcome back to Principal Matters Podcast, everyone. This is Dr. Jen Schwanke, and you have come back to the show where we explore what matters in education and leadership. I am, as I said, I'm co-host Dr. Jen Schwanke, and today we have a very special guest with us, Dr. Dominique Smith, the principal of Health Sciences High and Middle College, which is referred to as HSHMC in San Diego. Welcome, Dr. Smith.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I'm so glad you're here. And you are actually, we're recording this in November, and you are actually not at work today. You are spending time with family. And so I'm just grateful for the extra time that you gave us today. I was first introduced to your school, Dr. Smith, while visiting San Diego as part of a grant from the Wallace Foundation. And I was accompanying my friend, Dr. Dustin Miller, about his PLC work. I was so intrigued by what I saw in your school that I wanted to bring you on as a guest. So I'm going to just tell a little bit about your school, and then I want you to tell us about yourself. Okay.
Sounds great.
So, so when I was there, it really is a unique school, very diverse, a profound mission to be home away from home for your students while prepping them for high demand careers in health and healthcare. And you really you are the driving force behind that vision. And so then I did that weird thing where I kind of Googled you, and I found out you're an author, you're a social worker, you're a national leader in restorative practices, and you are a huge advocate for building school cultures founded on equity and belonging. So I wanted to talk to you. So here we are. Tell our listeners about you as a person, as a professional, and as a leader of this unique school.
Yeah, awesome. Well, I guess the first thing I'd say, I'm a dad. So first thing, I'm a dad. I got three
Yes.
kids. I have a junior in high school, and then I have a third grader and a second grader. So when you think of education, it's around me all day, every day, because I get to experience that in a whole different avenue when I get to come home from some from work. Um, but yeah, then my day to day that I claim is I'm a principal, and that's what I love to do. I've been at my school for 17 years with different roles and responsibilities over that 17 years, but I've been a leader for 11, and just love what I do. Love our school. I think we're doing some really great things, and that motivates me to stay. I know there's this long-term conversation of leaders should change and make that impact somewhere else, but I get to do that on the consulting side. I do get to write books, and I do get to bring my passion into my writing and my consulting with schools. So I've been able to travel the world and try to see if what I'm saying works in places that I never thought I'd see, Istanbul and China and Egypt and Brazil and Croatia and Malta and across the country, and just being able to say, does restorative work, does building a sense of belonging work, our focus on instruction and leadership, does things we're doing work? And so that's just kind of been my journey, and I love what I do, and I wake up every day excited, and um, I don't leave because I go out and I get to try new things out with other schools. We get to see some great things, and then I go back to our site and say, hey, we were challenged somewhere else. Can we do it? Can we enhance it? Can we affirm it? And that's kind of what we've been doing.
I felt that in your school, Dr. Smith. I felt like you were all in with your school, but I also felt like you had a depth of knowledge that many times we don't have as leaders if we're just rooted to one place for 17 years, right? People ask me that too. That, I've been in the same district for almost 27 years, but I also am out in the world, right? I'm out seeing how other things happen and how they work. And so that's what you're onto something there. I really think it's kind of that pushing your own growth. And that then you can bring back to your school. So your school's mission is built on these pillars. And I'm going to stop talking because when you talked about the pillars to our group visiting that day, I was enthralled. So tell listeners about these pillars.
Yeah, so the pillars were created by my mentors, and where my journey's taken me is I had the greatest mentors. My mentors are Ian Pumpian, Doug Fisher, and Nancy Fryan. They had a vision of what schools could look like. And so they created a book called The Culture of Achievement, and what you could do for a school. And these five foundational pillars really just helped me understand what a school could look like. And some of those really just grew, and I try to enhance where my own thoughts were. But the first thing was welcome. And when I got into that welcoming community, and what does welcoming look like, that every person should be welcoming, you should be doing these audits of your school of where is not a welcoming place, because every moment of your environment should have that experience of welcoming, from your front desk to your chemistry room to the drop off and the pickup to your lunch room. And you start to go to these other campuses, and you could see that there's places that, oh, right here isn't very welcoming, and that
Mhm.
changes what we like, a sense of belonging. That increases behavior, that increases how dignity is built. And so that has always been a huge factor for me. Welcoming has always been something that I say is a non-negotiable now on our campus. And then you started to transfer to these other pillars that we had. It was do no harm, and the do no harm we took from the hospital setting: do no harm to ourselves, others, or to the community. And that's where our restorative work lived. And we said we will focus on how do we try not to do harm, but if we do, how do we own it, fix it, and repair it? And there's been some back and forth on people's vision of restorative, and how some people have implemented incorrectly. Where we're not
Right.
saying get rid of consequences, we're not saying don't hold kids accountable. We're saying when harm is happened, how do we actually do true accountability and make sure things move forward in the right direction? Our third pillar was around choice words, a book by Peter Johnson, making sure we're using language as adults to build up rather than break down. And that's just been a huge reminder to the adults in our building that we have a very, very hard profession. And there's going to be
Mhm.
days where people get under our skin. And what
Right.
are we saying to and about the students that we get to serve? Because at the end of the day, all of us have a memory. And is it the good memory or bad memory about the adult in front of us? And what
Right.
what can we do? And so that's kind of been a big factor for us. Our never too late to learn pillar has been the biggest challenge ever, and that's always the one that people always ask about. But we're a competency based grading school, mastery based, whatever people are looking at. How do we continuously be driven to help kids understand the content, master content, showcase they master content? If they struggled, how do we look at our progression? How do we look at our our guides? How do we make sure we just aren't counting points and really looking at kids understanding where we're at? And that's a challenge every single day. That's a whole series podcast, because
Right.
that's going to bring up a bunch of emotions for people every single time. And
Yes.
then our last bit is how do we continuously take the book, Good is the Enemy of Great, and be our best selves? And we're going to say we're the best school in the universe. And it's not to compete against anybody, but it's to say when we walk into our building, we are going to bring our best selves. And we did behind the scenes of Disney years ago, and there was a language of on show and off show. And we said we're going to be on show and be our best selves as best as we can. And if there's something that's not allowing to be our best selves, communicate that with all of our stakeholders so we're being transparent, to then make adjustments to be our best selves. And do we live up to the five pillars every single day? Absolutely
Right.
not. But is it
Right.
a framework to hold us accountable as the adults in our building? Absolutely. And then that just trickles down to our kids, and they start to understand it, they start to talk about it, they start to get their own concepts of this, and it has just helped us in our space. And that's what we're trying to help other people understand. Maybe one, two, three of these pillars might benefit other schools and some of the work they're doing.
Right, right. When you were talking about the pillars that day when I was there, you had me at do no harm because I've always loved that mindset from the medical community, and I think we could learn a lot about that as educators, right? Because it is a blurred line between consequences and discipline and restoration and also really thinking about that do no harm kind of from the 30,000-foot view certainly helps. The other thing you had me with was that choice words, because when you say that people remember, or, there's the memory there. I remember the high school assistant principal where I attended, he called everybody knuckleheads. And he was trying to be kind and funny, but I remember that, and it was just a word, but kids remember. They absolutely do remember. Um, so that leads me to my next question about your leading voice in restorative practices. You have co authored books such as Better Than Carrots or Sticks. So, share a story from HSHMC where a restorative approach, rather than a punitive one, fundamentally changed a student's trajectory.
Yeah. So interesting because I've been able to talk about restorative work now for over a decade. And, you don't, you lose some friends when you talk about restorative, right? And some colleagues because there's this myth that they're saying, I don't believe in discipline. And I just want to make sure as people listen to you and principals that are listening to this, I am never saying you can't suspend a kid. I'm never saying you can't expel a kid.
Right.
What I'm trying to get on with our restoration is kids actually taking ownership for their actions, right? And when we look down at our systems, when I look at where we're at, I just think sometimes we punish kids and they just return back with no growth, no change, no want to move forward. And that's why we continuously see the same behaviors. Now, is there conversation of we have to, if it happens again, and the progressive discipline, and we've gone into these conversations? Yes, I understand that if it happens again, what's next and what's different? That doesn't mean you don't fade away from the conversation, right? And that's kind of where I've been looking at with people is restorative practice doesn't mean you get rid of the consequence. It means you're the follow-up, the check-in, the feedback, the accountability component. My big work right now is making sure people understand the protocols at your school should be black and white. As I'm a fighter against black and white, protocols are black and white, outcomes are gray. That's the beauty of
Mhm.
this work. And I think as your question lives, that's where my students have been. I had a fight this year. And protocol, right, is protocol is their admin office. Protocol is parents are called. Protocol, fight is a fight. Now, in some of our schools, what would happen? Those kids are gone 3, 5 days. Those kids right there, they were friends. Those kids made a bad choice. Those kids, they stepped on each other's shoes, and this is the first time in their life they've had new shoes. They made a really poor choice. What did they do? They owned it. They fixed it. And the trajectory where it was a powerful moment, the person that broke up the fight was a teacher that had been there 3 days.
Oh
The
my.
kid asked to apologize to that adult. And when the adult sat down with that kid, he was like, this isn't who we are as a school. I don't know you. I'm
Right.
sorry that you're new to this school and that you had to experience that. What a that teacher could have gone home and said, I work at a new school. It's been 3 days. There is already a fight, and just his narrative that he would have shared. Or
Right.
His narrative is there was a fight in 3 days. The administrative team took time out of my day to find me coverage to have a conversation, but a kid advocated to chat with me, and a kid made a conversation and had a conversation with me, and then we built a follow-up plan. I'm brand new, and I'm following up with this kid a week from now, 2 weeks from now, 3 weeks from now, just to check in. And I think that builds one a different connection for that adult and that student. And that student stands up for, yes, like I made a poor choice and I want to own it too. Now, does that kid get away with it? No. Could we send him home if we need to? Absolutely. Can we label a suspension? Absolutely. Or what did we want? We wanted him to own it. We wanted him to fix the problem. We wanted him to take accountability. And then what do we need to do? We need to get him more counseling, most likely, because he
Mhm.
doesn't know how not to, because in his terms at the moment, how not to handle it, because that's his current life. Right,
Right.
and so I think those are some of the things that you have to navigate, and it's a very, interesting world to have the conversation of being restorative, because why is restorative, scary to talk about? Because all of us have grown up in the same system. If we're scared of I don't wanna disrespect any parents. It is there's a feeling of fear of what parents are going to say, but all of us as parents have grew up the same system. If there's a fight, we want to see a consequence, because that's all we ever experience, no matter
Right.
what year we graduated, where we graduated from. I'm a restorative guy. My mind might go there if my kids were in a fight, and so I think there's these, and that's just the fight side, more high level.
Right.
But restoration, and where I'm trying to get to on this work, is I'm talking about the person that was causing the harm, but I think what we miss in restoration is the person that was harmed, allowing
Right.
them to finally have a voice, allowing their voice to be heard, allowing them to come back to the table, allowing that person to say, that can't happen to me anymore, and having that moment of closure for them. Because when you don't have closure, those that non-closure becomes triggers and fears and all of that, and that's what we're trying to hopefully eliminate. So I think it's the other side is, where do you see the growth and where do you see success points in kids? It's the kids that actually finally got the voice and got the power back.
Right. Well, and what one of the things that's so critical there is that sense of accountability, to say, "Hey, this is on me. I did this." And it's so interesting how hard that is for people to do, even adults,
Mhm.
much less kids. And so I think the idea of teaching that and asking, hoping, wanting, wishing, setting up conditions for kids to be able to, say that safely, "I messed up, and I'm really
Oh yeah.
sorry for the harm it caused." Your background, Dr. Smith, is in social work, which
Mhm.
I find fascinating. So, how does that social work lens inform your daily decisions as a principal in a way that maybe more traditional educational leadership paths might not?
Yeah, my early career started in special education, and then from special education went to social work, and I feel like I um, could possibly have a little bit more empathy. And
Mhm.
what my vision was leadership with empathy and understanding the whole child and understanding what's going on, and then looking at that of saying, what are the outside influences that could be impacting the inside of our building. And that's why I've challenged rules and expectations and things, because when I look at our students, they mimic their heroes, they mimic the people that they love, they mimic their community. And then our students come in just idolizing these role models, and they get in trouble rather than being retaught. And I think that's where I've been trying to do with our leadership, is not allowing kids to get away with things, but understanding, hey, when you go out there, this is what happens, and this is what we're trying to do. The other side is, my dream was never to be right here as a principal, right? I wasn't the best kid in school, right? I was that typical, played sports, didn't really love school, and then so I think that helps me understand too, like, how did I want to be treated? And I wanted a relationship with some of the people that were giving me some of the consequences at school. Even if there's a consequence that you have to give it to me with some type of dignity or respect. Let me
Right.
understand that I did do something wrong, but I'm still a human being. And I think that's
Right.
what I'm trying to generate when I'm working with kids is, hey, at the end of the day, what you did was unacceptable. And this is a natural consequence, but you're still a human being. I don't have
Right.
to make you feel less of who you are. I don't have to tell you you're not going to be anybody. I can tell you your choice was wrong. I can tell you
Right.
what today is not the best day, but what can we do differently? And that's why I really merged with the restoration is today's a terrible idea. Today's a terrible action. The behavior was terrible, but you as a human isn't, and that's that partnership that I was trying to generate with our restorative work.
Right, right. Speaking of partnerships, your school has a very unique pathway partnership in health and healthcare. So tell our listeners about this theme and the core curriculum and what your kids do with that connection.
Yeah, we wanted to make sure our pathway programs and our CTE pathways met what the needs were for our community. And so around 2008, 2009, uh, there was a study out and it said by 2030, which is wild that it's almost here,
Right, right.
uh, the need for nurses in the healthcare system, what the need was going to be. And at the time, there wasn't a high amount of schools focusing in the healthcare field. And so we partnered with Sharp Healthcare, and unbelievable what Sharp Healthcare has done for us as a small school. They have partnered with us and said, let us showcase students that have never thought about being in the healthcare system of what we can do. And what it did is it started us thinking, and what a lot of people started to think of like only doctors, 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 doctors. And what we started to see was engineers and security and food services and CNAs and transport and EMTs. And it started just to broaden the possibility of getting into the job field and what
Right,
it allowed our students to do. And it's just like to hear the stories of like our kids coming back as a freshman, and on a Thursday afternoon they witnessed a labor and delivery, or on a
wow.
Thursday afternoon they witnessed an ER procedure where somebody was in a machete fight and was losing an arm and had to have this medical, procedure done, or on a Wednesday afternoon, have a life saving procedure, or on a Friday afternoon, this family member just saying, thank you. You've walked my grandmother every single day, and she just knows you by name. And every time I come in here, they think of you. Like these students, these kids are getting this life experience that even if they don't go to the healthcare field, they're getting skills that are transferable to wherever they go next. And it's just been a really amazing experience that Sharp has offered us.
Right. Well, that healthcare world is so, if you don't feel empathy after working in a healthcare environment, then something's gone wrong because I think empathy, if nothing else,
Mhm.
being surrounded by people who don't feel good is really a profound experience. And when I was there, I had the opportunity to visit several classrooms, and your teachers seemed very, very mission driven. So talk to us about cultivating that culture of continuous professional learning and ensuring that the staff is as supported as the students are.
Yeah, I think as coming up as as an educator, you don't know what you don't know, and I
Right.
think that's always like, oh wow, that's interesting to learn. And I think one of the things that we've tried to commit to our team is what do you need to know and how do we support you. And so we've tried to not overwhelm our team, but try to make sure whatever's out there, we deliver it to you as best we can. And
Right.
so we try to get our team into conferences as best as we can. If you tell us like, I think this is going to enhance our learning or my learning, let's go for it. We've restructured how we do our professional development. We've done a couple of things that I think are interesting. First and foremost, we come together as a team in the morning, and there's
Mhm.
75 of us, so we're not as big as some of these other schools that are listening, but we talk to each other every morning. We come together, we call it a team meeting or morning meeting, and all 75 of us, 78 of us come together. We're there for 10 minutes, we see each other, we talk about what's going on in our building, then we set off for the day. And then out of the morning, we shifted our PD model to the morning. So we do pocket PDs, 30 minutes of an intense kind of focus to make sure that we are staying on top of what it is. And so on Mondays, we do a different focus level, more on coaching. And then on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, we do a collective efficacy cycle where our teachers have selected what they want to learn for the next 18 weeks. And then every third week, they showcase just a little bit. This is what I'm learning. This is what I'm practicing. This is what I'm doing. And then at 9 weeks, they do a whole little learning cycle with our team just to showcase this is where my efforts have been put into. And then going back into our Fridays and then going to content areas, focusing around our teacher clarity and our success criteria to make sure that we never lose our number one priorities. And those are our priorities. We have a priority on gradual release of responsibility, our teacher clarity work, and our restorative work is non-negotiables. And so that's that focus group, and then just doing some work around that as we go back and build on those areas. Then as we're getting into that, going in, making sure that we're hitting on the other area needs as come up, and where that comes up and where we get the feedback. That morning meeting every day, we hear what our needs are. So we make
Right.
adjustments as we hear our team say, these are some of the gaps that we're hearing or seeing within our school. And that just has been a really good mark for us, because when you hear what your team needs, you can make the adjustments. And we took that, if you ever think about that, of a team meeting that large, and you're like, oh, why would I ever do that? Well, we took that from high high businesses. You see that at big level hotels. You see that at charge nurses, right, at the hospitals. You see that when that rotates. You see that on casino floors. You see that on cruise ships when the morning starts. You see these circles that happen, these meetings, because everybody has to be on the same page, and that has just made a huge shift in the culture and climate
Right.
that keeps us all on the same page.
That's a great point. I have seen many of those environments you just described, and I've seen people have those come together meetings. And you're right, there's a culture in schools that we can't do that, or we shouldn't do that. And I think about in the consulting work I do, one of the things that peeves principals the most is getting teachers to work on time. And so I just wonder how that changes that sense of getting people literally physically in the building versus getting everyone kind of on the same page with what we're gonna do today, what we're gonna do this year with these kids. It's
Yeah.
kind of a mindset shift.
Yeah. And it's we have days where not everybody's there on time, but I mean, it's at the end of the day, it's just good to see everybody, because our buildings don't allow us to do that. We're
Right.
siloed. And as leaders, we know that we continuously will come back and say, shoot, we're siloed. Our departments are siloed. The wings of building are siloed. Grade levels are siloed. We talk about this and say, what do we do? And we do one activity or two activities a year that brings everybody together, and everybody gets all hyped up and everybody gets excited. And they say, that was really good. I wish we did more of that, and then it fades away. And
Right.
so, what can we do with intentionality to make sure it happens more than twice a year?
Right. So as you're talking, I'm thinking about the principals of your school, not the principals with a PAL,
Mm.
but you have several principals, and they're all pretty telling about the mission and the vision of your school. Things such as we do what it takes, a diploma that matters, respect for oneself, other people, and the environment. Talk to us about those principles.
Yeah, I think when we talk about a diploma that matters, like, that one's huge for us. Why
Hmm.
why would a kid want to come to our school? And why would a kid want to stay in our school? Chronic absenteeism is through the roof. Why would
Hmm.
kids in our community say, yeah, I should go get that diploma? And
Hmm.
so that just is a drive factor back as a reminder to our team is, make sure that every day is worth coming for. And this diploma, when you get this, you earned it, it was worth something, it's going to be relevant. And so I think that was why we put that in there, is like, this diploma matters to you.
Right.
Also, it's just a reminder too to our team of how many of our students haven't got a diploma. And this diploma will matter to our students. And don't forget that factor. Don't lower the bar because of that answer, but think about why this is going to be important to our students. And so I think that's a big factor. The
Mhm.
other side is we do what we love, right? We do it as a family because we have to hold each other accountable. And I think the accountability factor comes into people with titles don't have to hold each other accountable. Our
Mhm.
team has to hold each other accountable. And that's where we're trying to get to is the culture and climate is not to point each other out and point fingers. It's just like, hey, if there was a miss, any one of us can hold each other accountable. Just like I've said, if I'm doing something wrong, hold me
Mhm.
accountable. Who's gonna tell me? Because there can't be an us versus them. And that's been a really good thing because we are a family. There's families are gonna have hard moments, but you come back because you have the hard conversations and you move forward. But that's that big piece because at the end of the day, we should be loving what we do. And so I hope when people come in like yourself that you see people laughing and
Mhm.
giggling and smiling. And I don't want anybody ever, like, if an administrator walks down the hall, that, you see everybody scatter away because they were talking to each other in the hallway for 2 minutes. That should never be a fear factor. Like, oh, I'm not allowed to talk to my colleague because here comes the administrator and he's going to yell at us, like, what are you doing out here? No, like, I want to laugh with you. Let's laugh for
Right.
14 seconds,
Tell me
1 minute.
what's funny. Yeah.
Let's laugh and have a good time now. And because I know if we laugh here, I know when you go back, you work so hard. So go ahead and laugh. Go ahead, giggle, tell a joke, enjoy yourself, and then go work really hard. And that's where I want every person that comes into our building to feel that. Like, I love what I do. And then I think that will then be able to be to a space where if you're not loving what you're doing, you'll feel safe enough to tell somebody why you're not. And that's
Right.
where, and then again, if someone can't do that, then there's a gap on our leadership. And we got to
Right.
figure out why people can't tell us why they're not loving our space right now.
Right. And that's such a important skill for a school leader. I think early in my career, I would not have been ready for someone to give me feedback if I wasn't doing what I needed to do. I would have gotten defensive and I would have felt like I was being criticized. And now I'm with you. Like, tell me, the mission, the vision, you know what we're trying to do here. And if I'm going sideways, I need someone to bring me back for sure. Tell me about that. A close cousin to that conversation is about teaching and modeling respectful dialogue and critical thinking when not only in the classroom when challenging topics come up in the classroom, but also in your hallways and in conversation with your administrative team and your teachers. How can we as leaders in such a polarized social and political climate, how can we insist upon respectful dialogue and critical thinking?
Yeah. I mean, a risky conversation, right?
Right, right,
I think where we've been at, and I think, with the diversity of our school, it's really a place of helping individuals understand you have the right to be able to express uh, to a point how you feel,
right.
and you should be able to model to students, like, express how you feel. I want students to be advocates. I want students to be able to stand up for what they believe in. And what I try to help our team understand is your neutral side will allow students to then be able to say yes or no and explain why. Now, where that gets to is what we've tried to do, and what our history department has done a really good job at, is through our restorative work, circling up on hard conversations. And we bring up topics in history to allow students to discuss it. So if there's an outside conversation that is going to impact learning, our history team knows that they are going to take on the circle for the day,
Mm,
right? So recently, um, a family had been picked up by ICE on our street. That is
mhm,
a huge moment, huge fear factor,
mhm.
huge all of that. That's going to impact our community. And
Right.
people could feel any which way on that. Now, our history department knows that's going to impact learning. So they're going to figure out what the topic is. Are they going to come in and say, how do you feel about ICE? Absolutely not. But are they going to maybe come in and say, when someone experiences fear, how do you think that impacts
Mm,
going to school? How do you think that impacts going to work? How do you think that
right.
impacts, that then allows people to address that component, right? And so that's some of the things that have been going on, right? You had the assassination this year. That is
Mhm.
a big, huge topic that when you look at our standards and we have to have debates in classrooms. There was a bunch of students said, I'm never going to debate again. Well, we have to
Mhm.
have this conversation. So our history department, again, bringing this conversation to circle of what does it mean to use your voice to make impact, right? Or
Right.
another topic. And so I think that is how we have tried to use our collective conversation.
Mhm.
If our team says this needs to be addressed, we collectively will have conversation with our history department, and they'll run those circles, because then if kids want to talk about, our students want to talk about it, we'll say, great idea, hold that, it's going to be going into your history class when you have history today.
Right.
Now, do we always meet the mark? No, but it does give us at
Right.
least a space where I think we've had that.
Right.
And then, again, being able to have conversations with teachers as needed.
Right.
It's very interesting now as leaders, as we know, how many of our teachers want to post things on social media, and
Right.
a- just encouraging them and reminding them of how many people see what they post. And you're not limiting to them what they can say, but what that might bring towards them, and just if they need a space to talk about or how they're feeling. And those are some of the things. But it's very interesting. It's just it's such an interesting space. But I mean, all the way to things that we bring into our conversation
Right.
at our school, like, well, this is the restorative practices. Going back to what
Right.
you're saying, there could be somebody in our team, and there could be right now some people on our team saying, this is woke and I don't like it and this is ridiculous, and come talk to me about it. I have
Right.
no problem listening to your feelings. I'm not going to say our vision is right or wrong. Let's listen together, and because your truth and my truth is somewhere here,
Yep.
and let's try to
Yeah.
find a middle ground and figure out how to move forward together.
Exactly. Exactly. And just listening, that's such a critical component to understanding is that listening piece. So, final question, Dr. Smith, when you look at the entire ecosystem that you've built at your high school, the health theme, the restorative practices, that home away from home diploma that matters, all of that, what is the one thing you're most proud of and what's your biggest dream?
The thing I'm most proud of, the team I'm work with. I'm
Mm,
nothing. I'm nothing without them. I get to be on podcasts, and I get to travel, and I get to do some cool stuff. But if I'm truthfully honest, like, I'm nothing without the team that's around me. And I hope I get to say that every single time. Is I work with some of the best people on the planet, and I've been able to benefit because they come in every day working so hard to make
mhm.
our building better. And I hope I can praise them anytime I get. So the best thing is we've created a place where amazing individuals have continued to be amazing and made a special place for kids. And I think that's the heart of our school. Is the team that we work with said, I want to be here for kids. And I'm so proud to be a part of that. And my dream for our school is to keep the legacy that I think we have right now, but to take on the challenges and meet the challenges, and increase those challenges. Right, we do have some challenges on our what our scores say. Right,
Mhm.
so we have the culture component and the climate component. There's some gaps in some of our scores. Chronic absenteeism, our community sometimes doesn't allow that. So looking at
Mhm.
that, the partnerships with our community and becoming a stronger community school when kids make poor choices because the community supports them to make poor choices. What's our wraparound services for those kids? I really want to do that. And then um, my dream is to find and support the next person that takes my spot, right? Because
Yes.
I gotta go eventually, and the next person that wants to take my spot and say, "This is our dream," and keep this thing
Right.
going because this is our little small piece of what we think is right, and keep that alive. And so that's kind
Right.
of where I think we're going. And again, I hope more people like you come and visit our school because people give us feedback, and then it just helps us hopefully increase some of the things or enhance some of the things we're doing, and then challenge us on in fixing some of the things that we need to work on.
Right. Right. That's it reminds me of when I did walk into your school. I've been in San Diego about 4 minutes and I'm looking for this classroom where we're supposed to meet and some kid looks at me and he says, "Here, come with me." He takes me up 4 flights of stairs. I'm wheezing like I'm 80 years old, and he's like, "I'm on the cross country team. Don't worry, ma'am. This is hard for me too." So, he made me feel a little bit less awful as I was lost and wheezing his way up the stairs. So, you're doing a great job with kids. You really are. And Dr. Smith, I wanna thank you so much for this incredibly insightful conversation because I think the work that you're doing and your team too, I got to meet them, incredible people, and that work is powerful and it's necessary. And I'm sure all the school leaders listening here today got a lot to think about. So, to our listeners, if you want to learn more about Dr. Smith's work, you can find his books on all sorts of things and visit his school's website at hshmc.org. And Dr. Smith, where can they find you if they want to reach out?
You can find me wherever. You can find me on Twitter and you can find me on Amazon. I think those are the two best plot spots right now.
Perfect.
And
Perfect.
Corwin. I gotta shout out Corwin. Corwin, that's where I'm working a lot right now.
I was going to say, shout out to your publisher.
Yeah,
Corwin's doing
Corwin.
great. Yes.
Yeah,
Thank you to Corwin. And thank you, Dr. Dominique Smith. So great to have you today.
thank you.
Thank you for listening to today's episode of Principal Matters, the School Leaders Podcast. If you enjoyed the show, would you take a moment and like, share, subscribe, or leave us a review? In fact, if you share it out with a friend, even more people can become a part of these conversations. Sign up for our newsletter at williamdparker.com for even more free resources. And don't forget to check out our website to learn more about our books, professional development offerings, Grow Academies, masterminds, executive coaching, and keynote presentations. Wow, let's keep learning together. And thank you for doing what matters.
Principal Matters.